The orbital Zelian habitat rotated slowly above the gray, cratered face of Tralos Minor, a forgotten moon with no atmosphere and even less meaning. It hung in the dark like a scar from a past no one wanted to remember. The station wasn't built for comfort, just necessity. Steel walls, pale lights. No sounds but recycled air and the faint pulse of machinery. Unit D9 sat near the outer ring, one of the most isolated quarters on the station. It was where they sent people who weren't expected to come back. Inside, the silence was heavy. Kalira Velvin sat in her hover chair, facing the window where the stars blinked like distant memories. The chair adjusted her posture with a soft mechanical click, correcting for spinal support. She hated that sound. It reminded her of the truth, that she hadn't walked in over 15 years. There were no pictures on the walls, no books, no signs of a life, just a bed, a sanitation pod, and a stripped-down terminal she rarely used. Even the lighting was dull, functional. She had asked for it that way. Light made things feel too alive. The tone chimed overhead. A proximity alert. Incoming shuttle. She didn't react at first. Then the secondary notice blinked on her terminal, marked with the Council's seal. She scrolled through it slowly, eyes sharp but flat. A Terran specialist. Human. Civilian designation. Assigned to her for rehabilitation assessment. No option for refusal. Her fingers curled around the chair's armrest. She read the name again. Dr. Mason Creed. She'd heard of him. Barely. Earth's government had funded a string of off-world prosthetic programs, some successful, most untested on Zelian physiology. That didn't matter. Orders were orders, even for someone already discarded. She didn't turn when the door opened. The hiss of pressure equalizing was followed by the faint, deliberate rhythm of boots on metal flooring. Not military. Too measured. Too careful. Commander Velvin, a male voice said. Calm, even. I'm Dr. Mason Creed. You agreed to a consultation. She stared through the viewport. I said I'd let you talk. He didn't move closer. The silence stretched. She could feel him observing the room, how clean it was, how empty. No data pads, no personal items, just enough to keep her alive. That was the point. He set his case down and opened it without asking. Magnetic clasps snapped open. She didn't flinch. You suffered spinal trauma during a mission on Vega V, he began. T7 through L2. No regeneration, no movement below the waist. That's all confirmed. She turned slowly. Her hover chair pivoted without sound. I was conscious when it happened, she said. He nodded once, tapping on his device. And no successful attempt has been made since? None. Your kind won't be the first to try. I know, he replied. Then he looked up, meeting her gaze fully. But I'm not here to regenerate. I'm here to replace. Her eyes narrowed. Replace? External prosthetic legs. Neural interface controlled. Built for you alone. You want to cut off what's left of me? No, he said. I want to give you back what your people stopped fighting for. The words hung between them like static. She didn't blink. You read the file, she said. Then you know what happens to someone like me. I'm not just paralyzed. I'm erased. I lost caste, command, future. This chair makes sure I never forget that. I read your combat record too, Mason said. You didn't lose anyone under your command. 37 missions. Clean. You were never the kind who disappears. Her voice was quiet now, colder than before. What do you get out of this? He shrugged slightly. Earth pays me to restore function to veterans. Doesn't matter what species. You're not special. You're just next. She stared at him long and hard, searching for ego. She didn't find it. Just calm certainty. No false hope. no pity. He tapped his device once. A hologram projected in the air. Black, sleek limbs. Modular joints. Compact servos. Designed for combat, he said. Lightweight, adaptive, grafted to your spinal base with a neural bridge built from your own tissue. You'll fall. A lot. It'll hurt. But you'll move. You'll stand. She studied the projection. Her mouth didn't move, but her jaw was tense. Others have tried, she said. I'm not them, Mason replied. You sound confident. No, he said. I'm prepared. She looked back toward the stars. She didn't say anything for a long time, but she didn't say no. He closed his case and walked to the door. Just before it opened, she spoke again. You don't seem like the military type. He paused. I was, he said. Then I learned saving one person is sometimes more important than winning a war. The door hissed open. He left. And Kalira sat there, silent, still, fingers tapping slowly on the metal armrest. She hadn't moved in 15 years. But now her thoughts were moving faster than she could handle. And deep inside, a part of her she had buried long ago whispered something she hadn't dared in a long time. Maybe. Maybe she wanted to walk again. The diagnostics chamber was warmer than Kalira remembered. Not soft, not welcoming. Just less cold than the quarters she'd called home for over a decade. The lights overhead cast steady white arcs across the steel floor, and her medical tunic clung slightly to her back where the fabric opened to expose her spinal ridge. She sat rigid on the scanning platform, arms at her sides, hands flexed, not from nerves, but habit. It was the posture of a soldier bracing for impact. Mason Creed stood off to her left, adjusting the hovering scanner arc. His movements were precise but not mechanical. The kind of focus forged by repetition under pressure, not detachment. His sleeves were rolled back to his elbows, revealing lean forearms marred by old scars. Engineering accidents, maybe. Or maybe remnants of something deeper. He hadn't said much since she entered. She liked that. You'll feel a hum along the spine, he said, voice low, not soft. No pain, just feedback. I know how scanners work, Kalira replied, her tone clipped. You're not the first tech they've sent. Mason didn't answer. He pressed the control pad, and the scanner buzzed softly to life. A wash of orange light rippled across her lower back. She felt it. A vibration just beneath the skin, gentle but undeniable. It wasn't unpleasant, but it wasn't neutral either. It was a reminder. Of damage, of time lost, of everything she wasn't supposed to be anymore. Signal response is good, he murmured, mostly to himself. Cluster activation at L1 and L2 is partial, but still viable. That's better than expected. Kalira stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles. Your expectations are your problem. He glanced at her, but again said nothing. Minutes passed. The scanner swept again, this time slower. Kalira kept her breath even, but her fingers twitched against the platform. You said you're not using Regen tech, she finally said. What does that mean for the mesh? Mason didn't look up. It means we're bypassing dead zones entirely. The neural interface reads upper spinal intent, then translates it to external action. And if it misreads? You fall. Maybe crash through a wall, depending on how hard you were pushing. Her lips curled faintly, not quite a smile. Comforting. I don't do comfort, he said. Just results. She sat up straighter. The scan buzzed again, then powered down. Look, he said, turning the monitor toward her. The hologram of her spine flared into view. Detailed, precise, brutal. Every fracture, every calcified nerve, every inch of her that refused to function. This is the implantation site, he pointed, highlighting a small section just above the L2 fracture. We build the bridge here. The prosthetic legs will anchor through this point. It's invasive, but not destructive. Not destructive depends on what's left to lose, Kalira muttered. He didn't challenge her. Instead, he gestured toward the adjacent chamber. You want to see the legs? She hesitated, then nodded once. They entered the chamber. The room was dimmer, quieter. Against the far wall, suspended in a low stasis rack, were the prototype limbs. Matte black, compact, predatory. Nothing like the clunky cybernetics she'd seen on other recovery cases. These weren't braces. They were tools. Weapons. Carbon-fused alloy, Mason said. Lightweight, shock-absorbent. Each joint reacts to neural intention, not reflex, not delay, intention. It reads what you mean to do, not what you try to do. Kalira stepped closer, slowly. Her hand extended, hesitant, then rested on the femoral frame of the left leg. It was warm to the touch, not mechanical, alive. Have these been tested? She asked quietly. Not on a Zelian body, he said. You'd be the first. She turned to face him. So if I fail, I become your lesson. No, Mason said. You're already my proof. There was silence. Not awkward, not forced, just wait. Possibility. Then she asked the question she had avoided since his arrival. What if I wake up and nothing changes? Mason looked her in the eye. Then we rebuild again, or we stop. But either way, you get to choose. She pulled her hand back from the frame. Her fingers trembled slightly. She clenched. Now you do, he said. She nodded, slow and deliberate. Do it. Start prep. Mason nodded once. Tomorrow, 0600, fast from midnight. We begin the build before dawn. She turned toward the door but stopped halfway. If this works, and I walk again. He waited. I won't go back to who I was. I don't want you to, he said. I want you to become who they never let you be. Kalira didn't answer. Not with words. She left the room, steps silent, shoulders straight. Behind her, the black limbs remained in stasis, waiting, ready. In the hallway, the lights flickered once. This time, she didn't flinch. She walked the length of the corridor without touching the walls, not because she had to, but because for the first time in years, she wanted to. The surgical suite felt too clean, too perfect, the way death sometimes did before it struck. Kalira lay flat on the table, the soft hiss of filtered air the only sound around her. Her eyes stared at the ceiling above, plain white tiles, meticulously sterile, with no marks, no distractions, and no place for her mind to run. She hated that. Nothing to anchor herself to, nothing to hold on to but fear. She wasn't afraid of the surgery. She wasn't afraid of pain. She was afraid of what came after, of waking up unchanged, or worse, waking up changed and no longer herself. Mason stood nearby, masked and gloved, not in a rush but not wasting time either. His voice, calm and certain, broke the silence. Vitals are steady, oxygen levels normal. You're responding well to the pre-sedative. When I push the final mix, you'll be under in 20 seconds. Kalira didn't blink. Don't say anything soft before I go under. I wasn't planning to, Mason said, adjusting the monitor. But for what it's worth, you're the most prepared patient I've ever seen. That's not comfort. That's a fact, she muttered. Exactly. He reached for the injector and pressed the synth needle into the interface port just behind her ear. She felt the cool rush spread instantly through her skull, fogging the edges of her vision. Her muscles slackened slightly, but her mind fought to stay present. Her instincts were too strong to surrender without resistance. "Will I dream?" she asked, voice softer now. "Maybe," he said. "But it won't be pain." "Good. I want to remember." Her vision blurred. The light over her head stretched into a white tunnel. Her last thought before the darkness took her was simple and sharp. "If I wake up in that chair again, I won't survive it." Then nothing. When she woke, it was not to alarms or bright lights, but to pressure. Real, tangible pressure in her lower body. It wasn't pain, but it wasn't numb either. It was presence. Her legs existed again. Something heavy, something alive. The ceiling above her was different now, textured. Her quarters, not the med bay. She tried to move but stopped instantly. The sensation startled her. It wasn't that her legs didn't move, it was that they almost did. Almost, like a thought halfway finished. Her hands twitched on the blanket. "You're awake earlier than expected," Mason said from the wall console. His tone didn't change. Calm. Controlled. Kalira turned her head slowly. He stood there, arms crossed, watching closely. She could see the tension in his jaw, though. Beneath all that calm, he was bracing too. "I can feel them," she rasped. "Not clearly, but they're there." "They're locked," Mason said. "I kept response at 10%. No surprises. I didn't want them reacting to pain or panic." "Unlock them." "Not yet. You're still—" "Unlock them." Mason hesitated, then tapped his console. A quiet tone echoed. The change was immediate. A low hum surged through her spine, radiating outward. The neural bridge engaged like a second heartbeat. Her thighs tightened under the sheets. Her breath caught. She shifted slightly, and the sensation moved with her, like a body reborn, fragile but awake. She threw the blanket back. Her legs were there, matte black, perfectly aligned to her form, seamless interfaces disappearing beneath her skin, no wires, no cables, just her, reforged. "I need to stand," she said. "You're not ready." "I wasn't asking." Mason stood but didn't stop her. He moved to the side in case she fell. She slid her legs off the edge. The weight of them surprised her. Heavier than she remembered real legs being, but more stable. She gripped the rail beside her bed and pushed. The first attempt failed. Her knees buckled instantly. The servos didn't calibrate fast enough, and she collapsed forward. Mason caught her before she hit the floor. "Let go. You'll fall again. Let me." He released her, slow and careful. She braced against the edge of the wall, trembling with effort, and forced herself upright. Micromotors fired along the spine. Balance algorithms adjusted. For a moment, she swayed, and then she stood. No rail. No chair. Just her. Her breath hitched in her throat. Her arms tightened at her sides. Her legs held. "I'm standing," she whispered. Mason didn't answer. "I'm standing," she said louder. She took a step, slow, deliberate, 1 foot forward, her knee bent, her heel landed. Then the other leg followed. The neural bridge flared with a soft pulse. She took a third step and collapsed. The pain was sharp, not from the prosthetics, but from her body. Her real muscles. They weren't ready. They screamed in protest. She gasped, forehead hitting the padded floor. But even through the pain, she smiled, because she had moved. Mason knelt beside her. "That's enough for today." "No," she said, breathing hard. "It's not." "You'll damage the bridge." "I've been broken before," she said, pushing herself up. "This is different." He watched her. Then, finally, extended a hand. She took it. Her second attempt was smoother. She stood straighter. Her steps were tighter. She didn't fall this time. At the far wall, she stopped and turned to him. How long until I'm walking like a soldier again? Depends on how stubborn you are. I haven't changed, she said. I noticed. She touched the wall lightly, testing her balance. Her body didn't wobble. I've been sitting for 15 years. They thought I was finished. Mason said nothing. They were wrong. That night, she didn't sleep. Not because of pain, not because of fear. Because for the first time in a decade and a half, she was planning what came next. The training chamber lights buzzed overhead, harsh and clinical. Kalira stood at the center of the room, encased in matte black prosthetic legs that hummed softly with each subtle shift of balance. They were no longer unfamiliar. Not quite hers yet, but no longer strangers either. It had been 4 days since the surgery. 4 days since she'd felt the ground beneath her feet. 4 days since she'd fallen 3 times in a row trying to walk the length of the corridor, only to do it again. And again. And again. She was sore in places that hadn't moved in years. Her muscles screamed. Her spine ached under the constant tension of the new neural bridge. But her mind? Her mind was electric. Mason stood off to the side of the chamber, arms crossed as he watched her run another motion diagnostic. He didn't interrupt. He rarely did, unless it mattered. That was part of why she trusted him now. Well, trusted him enough. She dropped into a crouch, low, precise, arms forward. The servos adjusted automatically. She held the position, then sprang upward in a vertical leap that felt barely real. Her legs absorbed the impact when she landed with the grace of someone who hadn't moved freely in over a decade. Vertical impulse is stabilizing, Mason said, checking his monitor. You're compensating well for lateral drift. Kalira straightened, wiping sweat from her brow. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her suit clung to her skin, soaked along the collar. Her breathing was fast, controlled. This is the first time I've felt weightless since Vega Ve, she said quietly. And the first time I didn't hate it. Mason looked up from the console. You're moving at 70% of peak reflex now. We're ahead of schedule. 70%'s not enough. For you or for them? Kalira didn't answer. She turned back toward the training wall. A series of steel targets lit up along the chamber's left side. They glowed red, then yellow, then cycled randomly as part of the reflex assessment. Her legs shifted instinctively. She was ready. The test began. The room filled with light and sound. Targets flaring, sensors pinging, floor tiles adjusting to mimic unstable terrain. Kalira moved, fast, focused. Her prosthetics obeyed without hesitation. Left, right, crouch, leap. She spun through a tight arc and kicked a target clean off the wall. Mason's console flashed data as her response times narrowed to near inhuman precision. Then one tile beneath her foot flickered, deliberately weakened. Mason had programmed a failure. Kalira stepped, dropped half an inch, and the world tilted. But she didn't fall. She planted the other foot hard, corrected with a low roll, and came up in a 3-point stance. Breathing hard. Alive. The room fell silent. Mason stared. That was... he started, then stopped. You did that on purpose, she said, eyes hard. I needed to know if you could recover under unexpected failure. She stood slowly. You could have told me. You wouldn't have learned. She paused, considering, then nodded. You're right. Mason walked toward her, pulling the data pad off his belt. Your neural sync is at 94%. I've never seen anything like it. I told you I wasn't interested in numbers, she said. But the council is. Kalira froze. What? Mason turned the pad so she could see. A transmission log. High-priority Zellian contact routed to the station's command core. They know. Kalira stared at the screen. They haven't spoken to me in over a decade. They're not speaking to you now, Mason said. They're sending 2 observers. Arrival window, 36 hours. The weight in the room shifted. Everything that had been about healing, about rebuilding, suddenly it felt exposed, watched. What do they want? She asked, though she already knew. Control, Mason said. They want to see if you can be reclaimed. Her face darkened. I walked for myself, not for them. They don't care. She turned away from the console, walking slowly toward the observation window that looked out into the stars. Her legs carried her there, strong, confident. 15 years ago they erased me, she said. They wrote me off as a failed asset. You're not an asset, Mason replied. To them I am. I was a symbol, a warrior, the only female strike commander in the fleet. And when I broke, they buried me out here like a mistake. He watched her in silence. They'll want to see if I can still fight, she said, voice sharp now. But they'll never understand what I had to do just to stand again. Then don't give them what they expect, Mason said. Give them what they fear. Kalira's eyes narrowed. They fear people who can't be owned. Exactly. The room was still again, but not quiet, not calm. The air buzzed with something more dangerous than anger, conviction. Kalira turned back to the center of the chamber. We increased the pressure protocols. I want full reaction drills by morning. You'll burn yourself out. I won't, she said. I'm done surviving. I'm done remembering. She activated the next test manually. Lights flared, obstacles deployed, and she ran into them without hesitation. When Mason finally left that night, Kalira remained in the chamber, alone. She trained for 3 more hours. Every fall, every hit, every burn in her muscles felt like a chapter she was rewriting. They were coming. She would not meet them in a chair. She would meet them standing. The Zellian courier vessel docked without ceremony. No fanfare, no honor guard. Just a low hum through the station's spine as the magnetic clamps engaged and pressure locks cycled. Kalira had been awake since before the sunrise cycle, not that the station ever truly saw daylight. She didn't eat, didn't speak. She just stood in her quarters, hands at her sides, the matte black prosthetic legs humming faintly with each subtle shift of balance. Her body was still aching from the last night's brutal drills, but she didn't care. Pain wasn't weakness anymore. It was proof. Proof she had climbed out of the grave they buried her in. At exactly 08:30, the message came through. Arrival confirmed. Mason didn't knock when he entered her quarters. He never did. She allowed him entry now, something she wouldn't have done 2 weeks ago. He stood in the doorway, holding a datapad, eyes cautious. They're here. I know, she said, not turning. They'll go straight to the diagnostics bay. They want to see if the rumor's true, Kalira murmured, her voice low and steady. That the ghost they discarded grew legs and walked again. Mason stepped closer, his tone unreadable. You don't have to speak to them. Yes, I do, she replied. Because if I don't, they'll write the story themselves. He paused. Do you want reinstatement? She turned then, her eyes sharp. I want them to see what they couldn't break. I want them to know I'm not theirs anymore. Mason handed her a sleek black armor-plate exosuit. Then wear this. She took it without comment. The suit fit perfectly, stripped of emblems, rank, or insignia. Just a warrior's second skin. She clipped the neural relay nodes into place, syncing the mesh in her spine with the suit's sensory buffers. The moment the last clasp locked into position, the room's silence changed, like the air held its breath. She was no longer a patient. She was ready for war, even if there wasn't one. The counselors arrived with silence as their weapon. 2 Zellians, 1 male, 1 female, both draped in the silver and obsidian formal wear of the Restoration Subcommittee. Their faces were expressionless, perfectly neutral masks honed over lifetimes in the political cast. They stepped into the diagnostics bay with the cold authority of those who never had to bleed. Kalira stood waiting for them, her arms behind her back, legs locked. Not as a soldier at attention, but as something entirely new. "Commander Kalira Velvin," the woman said. No smile, no acknowledgement. Just her name, like it was being tested again. "I am," Kalira said. "We've come to assess the procedure," the man said. "We understand you underwent Terran augmentation without council oversight." "I didn't need permission to stop being crippled." There was a pause. The air crackled. "You are aware," the woman continued, "that such procedures violate caste purity regulations. Prosthetics, especially those foreign designed, are grounds for non-recognition." Kalira's jaw clenched, but her voice remained calm. "You already erased me. I'm just finishing what you started." Mason stepped forward, datapad in hand. "She's fully functional. Neural integration at 96.4%. Reaction times are above peak operational standards." The man didn't even glance at him. "This is not a discussion with you, Terran." Kalira stepped between them. "Then speak to me directly." They hesitated. Then the woman spoke again. "Are you requesting reinstatement?" "No," Kalira said. That single word shattered the stillness. The counselors blinked, as if unsure they heard correctly. "You refuse reinstatement?" the man asked. "You would reject a return to command? To recognition?" "I don't need your recognition," she said, stepping forward. The servos in her legs adjusted soundlessly. "I needed to walk, and now I do. That was never for you." Silence. Tension. Mason watched them both carefully, ready to intervene if needed. But this wasn't his moment. It was hers. "You wrote me off as lost," she continued. "Unrecoverable, disposable. You reassigned me to this orbit like a malfunctioning drone." "Kalira." "No," she snapped. "You don't speak for me anymore. I came back from nothing. I trained my body, rebuilt it, and fought for every inch of movement. You didn't help. You watched." The female counselor stiffened. "You risk destabilizing public morale with this display." Kalira stepped even closer. Now eye to eye. "I am the morale. I am the reminder that warriors don't fade quietly. You tried to bury me. I chose to rise." The man looked away, unable to hold her gaze. The woman inhaled sharply. "We'll make a note of your status," she said finally. "But you should be aware, without council endorsement, you will receive no resources, no support, no clearance." "I don't need your system," Kalira said. "I've already built one better." The counselors turned without a word and exited the bay. Their silence wasn't dismissal anymore. It was fear. When the door closed, Kalira stood there, breathing slowly. Mason approached her, his voice soft for the first time. "How do you feel?" She didn't answer right away. Then, after a long silence, "Like I just slammed a door that should have been locked a long time ago." He watched her. There was no victory in her eyes. No triumph. Just clarity. "You burned the bridge," he said. "No," she replied. "I tore it down brick by brick." That night she walked the length of the corridor in silence, every step echoing not with struggle, but with power. She didn't look back. There was no one left behind worth looking back for. The transport hangar was quiet except for the low mechanical hum of the environmental systems, the kind of silence that lingered before a final decision. Kalira stood alone near the observation rail, dressed in a plain thermal cloak over her suit, the shadows of the docking lights painting streaks across her face. Beyond the glass, stars burned distant and sharp, and the empty black held something she hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. It didn't come with a declaration or a ceremony. It didn't come with medals or banners or the council's approval. It came with the sound of her own breath, steady and alone in a place where no one owned her anymore. Mason approached from behind, his boots soft on the polished floor. He stopped beside her, arms folded, watching the shuttle bay begin to cycle into launch readiness. "I filed the Independence Declaration," he said without preamble. "You're no longer registered under Zelian authority." She didn't turn. "They didn't even try to stop it?" "They knew they'd already lost you." Kalira said nothing. Her jaw tightened as she exhaled slowly through her nose. The station's quiet hum carried the tension like a storm beneath the surface. She finally turned to face him. Her eyes weren't bitter, but sharp, focused. "I'm leaving the station." "I figured," Mason said. "Where?" "There's a civilian colony. Elizur 2, terraforming planet, half-built infrastructure, low security, no hierarchy, just people trying to survive and make something that lasts." Mason blinked. "You're going to dig trenches and guard water tanks?" "I'm going to build something with my own hands," she replied. "Something no one can take from me. I won't be a ghost anymore." He nodded slowly, considering her words. "That sounds like you." She stepped closer, voice even but laced with something more vulnerable than before. "Come with me." Mason blinked again. "You're serious?" "That's why I asked. If I wanted to be polite, I'd have let you guess." He glanced back at the shuttle manifest on his datapad, then back at her. "You'll still have to fight. Out there, it's not just storms and broken reactors. It's smugglers, corruption, terraformer riots, not clean work." "I don't want clean," she said. "I want real. And I won't be your doctor out there." She didn't blink. "You're not my doctor now." Mason studied her, really studied her. For a long moment, nothing passed between them but breath and the unspoken gravity of the choice she was offering. Then he nodded once, simple and quiet. "All right." Kalira didn't smile. She didn't need to. She simply turned toward the shuttle bay doors and walked without hesitation. Her steps were fluid, steady, deliberate. The weight of the prosthetics no longer felt separate from her. They responded to her like second nature, as if they were always meant to be there. 3 days later, the departure shuttle launched. There was no send-off, no council acknowledgement, just a datapad filed with exit clearance, a sealed file stamped civilian, and one name removed from the active veteran registry. Kalira sat in the pilot's seat, eyes forward, hands wrapped around the controls. Her legs adjusted to the shuttle pedals as if they'd always belonged there. Mason sat beside her, running checks on navigation and life support. Behind them, the station receded into the dark, cold, distant, irrelevant. "You're quiet," Mason said. "I'm thinking." "Dangerous habit. I've had worse." He smiled faintly but didn't push. "Do you know what you're looking for out there?" he asked. Kalira shook her head. "No, but I know what I'm not going back to." The shuttle slipped into the systems corridor. The stars shifted. The past drifted out of sight. Kalira didn't turn back. She never would. They landed on Elizur 2 just before dusk. The colony perimeter shimmered in the low afternoon heat, its edges unfinished. Storage containers stacked into makeshift walls, satellite dishes still uncalibrated, portable oxygen filters barely functioning. It was rough, it was real, and it was exactly what she needed. Kalira stepped off the shuttle and onto the rust-red soil, her boots pressing into the dirt like a claim, not as a soldier, not as a broken survivor, just as herself. In the weeks that followed, she worked harder than she had in years. She mapped security routes. She coordinated patrols. She built reinforcement layers around turbine fields. When someone asked who was in charge, No one answered. But when things went wrong, everyone looked at her. Mason set up in the fabrication dome, rebuilding exosuits from salvaged scrap, calibrating weather sensors, and running hydroponic diagnostics by night. They saw each other during long supply meetings, late-night field repairs, and sometimes, rarely, over dinner. No one asked what their history was. No one cared. It was a world that made room for action, not titles. One night, as a sandstorm rolled across the distant ridge, Mason found her standing at the edge of the colony, visor off, cloak fluttering. He handed her a canister of rehydration gel. "You forgot your patrol log." "I logged it verbally to Central Control." "Control's automated." "Exactly." He smirked, but his face settled into something quieter as he watched the storm approach. "They sent another message," he said. She didn't look at him. "From the council?" He handed her a data pad. Simple, unemotional. Voluntary reinstatement approved. Full clearance. Combat authority. Kalira stared at the screen. No apology. No explanation. Just permission. She passed the data pad back without a word. "You're not even going to think about it?" Mason asked. "No," she said. "They're offering everything back." "I didn't come here to go back." He watched her. "Then what do you want, Kalira?" Her answer came without pause. "This." She gestured around them. The open sky, the wind-swept dirt, the rough colony of builders and wanderers and people trying to matter. No uniforms, no orders, no council. This chaos, these people, this purpose. Mason didn't press further. They stood there together, the wind pressing against their backs as the storm loomed. But inside, she was still. She had walked away from power and found something far more dangerous. Freedom. The wind roared across the outskirts of the colony like a warning. Dust swept over the steel frames of half-built shelters, coiling around support beams and shivering the unfinished turbine towers. The storm wasn't the kind that broke equipment or tore open cargo containers. It was the kind that whispered chaos, the kind that hinted something was coming. Kalira stood at the edge of the south perimeter, one hand resting on her rifle, the other steady on her hip. Her matte black prosthetic legs braced into the ground with a soft whir, servos adjusting with the shifting terrain. Even in the storm's breath, she stood firm, not waiting, not guarding, owning the space she stood in. Behind her, the colony pulsed with tension. Colonists checked seals on storage units, secured solar tracks, and double-checked oxygen compressors. But they didn't panic. Not with Kalira out front. They had no formal leader, but her presence was enough. When she was on patrol, the wind could scream and the sky could fall, and still the people would believe they'd see another morning. Mason approached from behind, walking in slow, deliberate strides. His hair was wind-swept, a data pad clutched in one hand, his coat half-buttoned. He looked calm, but Kalira had known him long enough to hear the unspoken alarm beneath his silence. "You need to see this," he said. She took the pad and scanned the log. Incoming vessel. No civilian clearance, no relay signal, no terraforming executive ID, just one word. Private. "What's their declared purpose?" "Supply inspection?" Kalira raised an eyebrow. "There's no central command for this colony. Who are they inspecting for?" Mason's jaw clenched. "Exactly." Kalira's fingers gripped the edge of the pad tighter. Her voice was low. "Zellion?" "Could be, or corporate cleanup. But they're not broadcasting transparency protocols, and they're coming in fast." She looked out toward the distant sky where the signal triangulated. "ETA?" 6 hours. She lowered the pad. "Prep the perimeter. Silent alarm only. I don't want panic. Pull the kids and non-essentials to the bunkers." They'll know we're watching them. Good. Mason studied her for a moment. If it's the council, they're not here for negotiation, she said. They're here to remind me I broke the rules. And if it's not the council? Then it's someone else who thinks power means possession. She turned on her heel, walking toward the central courtyard. As the sun began to set, casting deep red hues across the jagged cliffs in the distance, Kalira briefed the crew. No speeches, no theatrics, just orders. Mason ran diagnostics on the solar shields while Kalira loaded stun rounds and low-yield shock grenades. She wasn't planning a war. She was planning a message. When the ship arrived, it didn't dock in the approved bay. It hovered 50 meters outside the colony, matte silver hull gleaming, no emblems, no insignia. Silent. Watching. Kalira stood at the front gates alone. The rear hatch of the ship opened. 6 figures stepped out, all in sleek black armor, council-grade design, Zelian crest at the collar. She felt it then. The final move. This wasn't a peacekeeping visit. This was containment. They approached without words. The lead officer removed their helmet. Kalira recognized her instantly. Council Enforcer Velena, the same one who had signed Kalira's discharge orders 15 years ago. Commander Velvin, Velena said coldly. I go by Kalira now, she replied. Commander died when you left me on Tralos Minor. We are here under direct order from Restoration Protocol 847, unauthorized military augmentation, unsanctioned civilian influence. You've violated half the Reconstruction Doctrine. Kalira didn't flinch. And yet here I stand. Velena's gaze darkened. Surrender the colony. Relinquish command. This outpost is now under official council correction. Kalira stepped forward. Her voice was clear, sharp, dangerous. This colony has no command, no ranks, no masters. These people didn't kneel to get here, and they're not kneeling now. You're choosing open defiance? Velena asked. I'm choosing independence. A moment of silence passed, then Velena raised her hand. The enforcers behind her shifted forward, weapons ready. That was their mistake. Before the first shot could be fired, Kalira moved. The prosthetic legs roared to life beneath her, servos locked, kinetic burst firing from her heels. She launched forward, faster than any organic soldier could react. She hit the first enforcer low, flipping him off balance, disarming the second before they'd even raised their rifle. The colony gates burst open behind her. Mason stepped out, followed by the security volunteers. No guns, just conviction. The council forces stumbled, recalibrating. They hadn't expected resistance. That was their second mistake. By the end of the confrontation, no one was dead. Kalira made sure of it. But none of the enforcers walked away without understanding exactly why she had been feared once, and why she was still dangerous. They left, battered and humiliated, their transport engines sputtering back into the atmosphere, stripped of control they never truly had. That night, Kalira stood at the edge of the colony once more. Mason joined her, arms crossed, his face unreadable. You realize they'll send more, he said. I hope they do. He turned to her. And what happens if they come with war? Then I remind them I'm not part of their army. I'm something they've never been able to train. She turned to face him fully now, the dusk painting streaks of orange across her bronze skin and the black lines of her legs. I'm not a rebel. I'm not a tool. I'm not a ghost. Then what are you? He asked. She smiled faintly. No armor, no walls, just truth. I'm free. Mason stepped closer. There was no hesitation now, no distance left to cross. Their fingers brushed, intertwined. I told you, he whispered. I didn't want to miss what came next. She looked toward the stars. distant, endless, open. "Then stay," she said. "We're just getting started." In the days that followed, the colony didn't just survive. It grew. More people arrived. Engineers, farmers, soldiers tired of being used, thinkers with nowhere else to belong. They didn't come for orders. They came for purpose. And at the center of it all was Kalira. No rank, no throne. Just a woman who had once been buried, and who now stood tall in the dirt, helping build something that would outlive any empire. She was no longer a fallen soldier, no longer a symbol. She was a beginning.